All right, thanks. Yeah, I'm going to go through SAS in the SAS Studio environment. So I'll go through this, assuming that no one has used SAS before, but also I'll try to touch base on those that have used SAS before in a non-web-based environment. So hopefully I'll be able to cover both. And after each slide, I'll pause for a second. If anyone has a raised hand, I'll try to keep an eye on the raised hands and pause if someone wants to ask a question as I go, or we could just save them for the end. It's kind of up to you. So, all right, next slide. All right, what I'm going to cover today is kind of what SAS Studio is, the different containers, tiers, and search engines is kind of getting to know, and then I answer some questions. All right, next slide. All right, what is SAS Studio? SAS Studio, it is basically, if you've used SAS before, it's just SAS using a web browser. Essentially what it looks like, but behind the scenes, there's a lot more going on. It's a cloud enabled, so it doesn't have to be installed on your desktop or virtual machine or whatever if you're using SAS now. You just have to have the URL and correct credentials to log in. So it just makes it a little more fluid and easier. Also quicker updates if anything needs to get done. So, all right, hope that's straightforward. Now, on your system, there are 3 tiered containers when I'm not sure if anyone has tried this yet, but you're going to be asked which tier you want to open up when you are opening up SAS. So, and each one has a different cost. A lot of the times you might just be doing the basic tier 1 where you're just doing simple data prep. And you can see here, won't read through all this. But if you're doing more advanced stuff, you're going to need the top tier 3. You'll have more access to different procedures and analytic tools within the environment. So just so you're aware that there are different ones and what are the differences. So. All right, the compute engines in SAS. In SAS Studio, there are 2 different compute engines. In prior versions of SAS, there's really only one, so this is not something you really either were aware of or had to be concerned with. But in this version, it's just something that it is good to know because depending on what you're doing, you might want to use one versus the other. And the 2 compute engines there's a SAS programming runtime environment, which people refer to as SPRE. And then there's the cloud analytics server, also known as CAS. So I will move on and get details on both of those. Next slide. All right, now SPRE is this is what you would have used in prior versions of SAS. If you're using SAS 9 or if you're in Enterprise Guide, this is what you would have used. It's just a single thread processing. It can be very useful. You'll still use this a lot in Studio, but you do have an option to use CAS as well, and I'll get into that. Next. All right, now CAS is the Cloud Analytics Server. So this is what the big difference is between the 2 environments. It is actually in memory engine. So you're going to load whatever data you want to load into memory, and then it will do a multi-thread processing to do its parallel processing. It can be much quicker, but you have to, but you're not, just because it's quicker doesn't mean it's always the right way to go. And the question I always get is, when do I use SAS? When do I use SPRE? And there's not an exact answer to that. I can be glad to answer specific questions either after, or if we want to have a follow-up, I'd be glad to help out too. But basically, if you're doing something pretty complex that maybe took a long time before, you could utilize CAS multi-thread processing. The nice part is, if one of the nodes goes down mid-process, it'll just switch over to the other one, and it won't kill your whatever you're trying to do. So it can be very useful to whatever you're trying to accomplish, and it could make things much quicker too. So, all right, I wonder if any questions on that. I know this is kind of a newer thing, especially if you've used SAS before. It took me a little bit to get a grip on it when I started using this. Was a long time base SAS user prior to going into using SAS Studio, so it's a little bit of a learning curve, but it can be very useful and helpful, and limit your runtime for some of your coding. So if there's nothing, we can move on. Let's save it. All right, now SAS Studio, this is what it looks like.
It looks like a question did come up in the
oh.
yeah. Gabriel, feel free to unmute.
Hello, everyone. I'm at NHLB. I had a quick question. Between SAS Studio and other sort of coding language, which one would be faster in this case, or more useful? Just sort of the same thing, machine learning and sort of analytics. In between, sort of, I'm thinking, because we're a little bit more familiar with Python and R, and I've used SAS for some of my training, but just wanted to get your sense of, like, I know that there's a lot of people still using SAS and see a huge benefit, and that's why we're adding it to BDC. But performance-wise, would you say that this is much better than sort of other?
It can be. I can't speak to the other languages, unfortunately, so I haven't done a side-by-side, but I have done quite a bit of machine learning within SAS Studio, and it can be pretty quick, especially with the complexity of the processing that it does.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I wanted to check if there was some comparison between the different sort of tools.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. All right. Okay. Yeah, this is what Studio looks like. It looks similar in a way to base SAS, or it's probably closer to Enterprise Guide looking, where it has the different tabs. But this is just the interface that it will look like. And I'll get into the different details on what each thing means on the side. But yeah, this is basically where you can open up a new project or a new program, or mess with the settings, open up existing, or you could save. You could have as you could see, this is just how it starts up, where you could start a new program. You can open up a new program. You could have multiple programs open at once. That's what the little tabs are. Then kind of go from there. So, and I'll go through what each section is. Kind of little tools. This is just a brief on this. On the left side, you will see little icons. This one right here is just the file explorer. This is just like any other system, where depending on how things are stored, And this is about how yours will be, where you'll have just different rights to where you can write and read from. So, all right. Now tasks. This is something depending on the version you've used of SAS before, you'll may have something like this. This is kind of a point and click version of coding. So if you're not a coder, or even if you are a coder and you don't remember some of the syntax, I use this. I use this quite a bit on probably either procedures that I don't use that frequently, that instead of trying to look up the syntax of something, maybe I'll do the point and click version of it, at least for one time, where it will, you kind of walk through and you'll say, all right, this is the data I want to use, these are the variables I want to analyze, and it will actually generate the code for you. And if you just want to do a one-off task, if you want to do like a something in proc GLM, just a simple linear model. If you want to just do one thing quickly, one off, you could do that. Or if it's something you want to add to your code, you could do that and just copy and paste the code into a larger program that you like. I've used this for both ways, or do a quick graph a lot of times, or sometimes I'll take the lazy way out, and if I know the coding, I don't want to type in all the variables, I'll just go this way and I'll just select all the variables and it'll type it up for me. So that's another advantage to doing it this way as well. So, all right, see any, go to the next. Snippets are pretty similar, but instead of just an individual task, it's just kind of a group of coding that are pre-programmed in here that you might want to utilize. Like if you want to import a CSV file, it kind of has it pre-programmed for you. And then you can kind of just do a point and click and then enter that little snippet into your code. There's a lot of different examples here. Each folder under snippets, you could see data, descriptive, and there's graphs. So there's within each one, there's a lot of different options. It's just kind of something you have to play around with, and sometimes it's worth using it. Sometimes it's worth just coding it up again yourself, as it's more of a very much a preference kind of thing. So, all right. The next is the libraries. If you've used SAS before, this should look familiar. The only difference is you will also have, in addition to your regular libraries, you'll have CAS libraries, so CAS libs, which is where your in-memory tables are. So, and if you're not familiar with SAS, this is basically a pointer to a location, a shortcut kind of thing, where you're going to have a quick term, usually or just something under 8 characters, where it'll be like your output data. You call it out data, and it will be to whatever folder on a directory that's points to that. That way, instead of putting a long directory down, it's a shortcut term that will point to that specific file location that SAS knows where it is. You either read or write to. So, all right. And that's all I had for today. Just a quick overview. Didn't want to overwhelm anyone too much with it. Glad to talk more about it, but I definitely wanted to leave some room for questions on the interface and what is new if you've used SAS before, or if you're new to SAS. So any questions?